Everything you experience in your life, your success, your failure, your happiness, your pain, doesn't start with your circumstances. It starts with your beliefs. What you believe about yourself, about others, about the world around you, acts as a filter for every decision you make and every result you get. Your beliefs are not just ideas you hold, they are the blueprint by which you build your life. Think about this: two people can experience the same situation, but one sees it as a tragedy and the other sees it as an opportunity. Why? Beliefs. If you believe life is happening to you, you'll constantly feel like a victim. But if you believe life is happening for you, even in your darkest moments, you will find the lesson, the path forward. That shift in perspective changes everything. Now here's what most people don't realizing. Beliefs are not facts. They feel like facts, they act like facts, and we live as if they're truth, but they're just interpretations. They're decisions we made, sometimes unconsciously, about what something means. And once you assign a meaning, you start filtering your entire experience through that lens. It becomes your personal reality. If you believe you're not good enough, it doesn't matter how much potential you have. You will sabotage it. You'll find a way to confirm that belief, because your mind is always trying to stay congruent with what you believe to be true. That's not just psychology, that's neurology. Your brain literally organizes your perception to match your beliefs. If you believe people can't be trusted, your brain will tune into every lie, every betrayal, every disappointment. And you'll ignore the love, the loyalty, the truth right in front of you. Your beliefs determine what you notice and what you ignore. Beliefs are the command center of human behavior. They tell your nervous system what's safe and what's dangerous, what's possible and what's out of reach. They determine whether you take action or stay stuck. If someone believes they can't lose weight because of their genetics, they'll eat that burger and say, "What's the point?" But if they believe their choices matter, that they are in control, that they can turn their body into a temple, that belief will fire up their energy, discipline, and creativity. The same body, different outcomes, because of belief. Let's take it even deeper. Your beliefs don't just shape your internal state, they shape the way you influence others. A leader who believes their people are capable will uplift and empower. A leader who believes people are lazy and unmotivated will control, criticize, and kill growth. And those beliefs get transferred. People feel your beliefs. They show up in your tone, your facial expressions, your decisions, your expectations. Beliefs are contagious. That's how culture is built. At home, in business, in nations. And don't think this is about positive thinking. That's surface level. I'm talking about core beliefs. Deep, wired in, emotional convictions that live in your subconscious. The stuff that shows up when you're triggered, when you're scared, when you're under pressure. That's where your true beliefs live. Not in what you say, but in what you do. Here's the real question: where did those beliefs come from? Were they chosen, or were they inherited? Did you pick them up from a moment of pain, a moment of joy, something your parents said, something a teacher implied, something a crowd applauded for? Most people don't choose their beliefs. They absorb them, and then they live their entire lives defending them, without ever questioning if those beliefs are even true or useful or aligned with who they want to be. When you understand that beliefs are decisions, not destiny, you reclaim your power. You realize that if a belief was formed, it can be reformed. If it was installed, it can be uninstalled. You can upgrade your belief system the same way you upgrade your software. Deliberately, consistently, with intention. And this is where transformation begins. Not with a strategy, not with a new goal, not with a morning routine. It begins with the belief that you can change, that you are more than your past, that your identity is not fixed. If you believe that deeply, you'll find the how. But if you don't believe it, the best strategies in the world won't save you. Belief is the switch that turns on the engine. It's the trigger for human potential. Without it, you stall. With it, you soar. This isn't hype. Look at any extraordinary person, any innovator, any visionary, any leader. What separates them is not just skill or knowledge. It's belief. They believed in something when others didn't. They believed in themselves when it didn't make sense. They believed in a mission bigger than them, and that belief gave them the energy to keep going when everything screamed, quit. So many people are walking around with brilliance inside them, dreams they've buried, potential they've numbed, because somewhere along the way they bought into the wrong beliefs. They believe they're not smart enough, or worthy enough, or lucky enough, and those beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. Not because they're true, but because belief is the architect of action and inaction. You don't experience life as it is. You experience life as you believe it is. Your beliefs are building your future whether you know it or not. Every decision you make, who you date, what career you pursue, how you treat your body, how you show up when things get hard, is traced back to a belief. And if you don't choose your beliefs consciously, they'll be chosen for you by your past, by your environment, by your fears. And that's a dangerous place to live because it means you're running someone else's program. You're reacting instead of creating. You're surviving instead of living. Most people go through life chained, not by physical barriers, but by invisible walls they don't even realize exist. These walls are built from limiting beliefs. They're not grounded in reality. They're not permanent. They are simply ideas that were accepted as truth somewhere along the way. They were learned, picked like bad habits, programmed into the nervous system by repetition, emotion, or the authority of someone we trusted. But just because a belief was learned doesn't mean it's right. It just means it's been practiced. Limiting beliefs are the silent killers of potential. They creep in subtly and disguise themselves as logic, caution, or even humility. I'm just not that kind of person. People like me don't get those opportunities. I always mess things up. I'm not ready. You hear these things enough, whether from others or from your own inner dialogue, and they start to feel like facts, but they're not. They're not laws of nature. They're conclusions drawn from pain, fear, rejection, failure, or someone else's projections. Think back to a moment when you failed. Maybe as a kid, maybe last week. In that moment, your mind didn't just register what happened, it assigned meaning to it. And if that meaning was, I'm not good enough, or I'm not capable, that belief got stored. Not as a temporary thought, but as a rule. And once the rule is there, it governs behavior. You don't need the event to repeat. Your belief does the job. You avoid recitate. You self-sabotage. You play small. You settle. And all of that stems from a belief that was formed under stress, without your consent, and never challenged. What's dangerous is how convincing limiting beliefs can be. Because they're tied to emotion. When something painful happens, we don't just remember the event, we remember how it felt. That emotion sears it into our nervous system. If you were embarrassed in front of the class and someone laughed, you might have decided, I'm not good at public speaking. Not because it's true, but because it hurt. That pain turns the belief into a survival mechanism. If I never speak in front of people again, I'll never feel that humiliation again. That's not just psychology. That's your brain doing its job to protect you. But the brain doesn't know the difference between danger and discomfort. It just wants certainty and safety. The truth is, most of your limiting beliefs were inherited. You didn't come into this world thinking you were unworthy, broken, or destined to fail. That got passed down through words, patterns, reactions. Maybe your parents were always stressed about money, so you learned that wealth is hard, that abundance is out of reach, that money causes conflict. Maybe someone told you to be realistic, and you took that as, don't dream too big. Or you were told you weren't talented, weren't smart, weren't attractive, and even though that voice wasn't yours, it became yours. You internalized someone else's fear or pain or insecurity and made it your identity. But you weren't born with these beliefs. You weren't born thinking small. You learned to doubt yourself. You were taught to be afraid. You absorbed the limitations of others until they felt like your own. And what's been learned can be unlearned. What's been conditioned can be reconditioned. But first, you've got to see it. You've got to call it out. You've got to stop treating limiting beliefs like facts and start treating them like opinions. And bad ones at that. Here's the trap: when a limiting belief goes unchecked, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you're not a leader, you won't take initiative. If you believe you're not lovable, you'll push people away. If you believe you're not creative, you'll never give yourself permission to try. And then you'll say, see, I told you so? But what you're seeing isn't the truth. It's the result of the belief itself. It's not evidence. It's a loop. People live their whole lives in these loops, and then they wonder why nothing changes. You can change your job, your relationship, your income, but if you don't change your beliefs, you'll find a way to recreate the same patterns, the same disappointments, just in new packaging. Because the belief always finds a way to express itself in action. If you want to see what someone believes, don't listen to what they say. Watch what they tolerate. Watch what they settle for. Watch what they expect. The person who stays in a toxic relationship doesn't believe they deserve better. The person who never takes a risk doesn't believe they can handle failure. The person who's always stressed about money believes there's never enough. The beliefs are running the show, and they don't need your permission to do it. They just need your attention. But there's something powerful you need to understand. Every limiting belief started with a moment. Just one. And if it started in a moment, it can end in a moment. It doesn't have to take years of analysis or reflection. It takes a decision. It takes a standard. It takes the courage to say, this story is done. But most people don't do that. Not because they can't, but because their limiting belief is comfortable. It's familiar. It gives them an excuse. If you believe you can't win, you don't have to try. If you believe it's impossible, you don't have to be responsible. There's a payoff in limitation. It lets you avoid disappointment, judgment, pressure. But that payoff comes at the cost of your life. You were not put here to play small. You were not designed for limitation. The same mind that created the belief is the same mind that can destroy it. You've got to become the architect of your belief system, not the tenant. You've got to tear down what no longer serves you and build a foundation rooted in power, possibility, and purpose. Every action you take, or don't take, starts with a belief. That belief creates an emotional state, and that emotional state determines the quality and intensity of your action. You don't act based on what's possible. You act based on what you feel is possible. Emotion is the bridge between belief and behavior. It's the fuel that either ignites your progress or drains your momentum. And that fuel comes directly from the thoughts and meanings you've attached to your beliefs. If you believe you're capable of achieving something massive, something extraordinary, that belief creates an emotional state of certainty. And certainty produces bold action. You step forward. You speak with power. You show up with energy. But if your belief is full of doubt, if somewhere in the background you think you're not enough, that you're going to fail, that you'll be rejected, then that belief creates fear, hesitation, anxiety. And in that state, even if the opportunity is right in front of you, you'll shrink, you'll retreat, you'll sabotage, not because of the opportunity, but because of the emotion behind your belief. This is why some people with less experience, less talent, and fewer resources can outperform those with more. Because performance doesn't come from your environment, it comes from your emotional state. And your emotional state is shaped moment by moment by what you choose to believe. If you believe a challenge is a threat, you'll feel stress, panic, overwhelm. But if you believe that same challenge is an opportunity to grow, to rise, to evolve, you'll feel energized, you'll feel focused. You'll feel committed. The facts didn't change, your belief did. And with that shift, your entire physiology shifts. Your posture changes, your breathing deepens, your tone becomes more certain. That's not magic. That's alignment between belief, emotion, and action. Let's bring it closer. Think about a time when you were completely fired up. Not just motivated, driven. Maybe you were about to start something new. Maybe you finally hit a breaking point and said, enough. What happened right before that emotion hit? You made a decision. You chose to believe something different. You stopped telling yourself the old story, and you stepped into a new one, even if just for a moment. That belief gave you emotional power, and that emotional power created the intensity to act. On the flip side, how many times have you known what to do, had the strategy, had the skills, but still didn't follow through? That's not a problem of knowledge. It's a problem of belief, and the emotional state that belief creates. If you don't believe your effort will make a difference, you'll feel apathy. If you don't believe you're worthy of success, you'll feel guilt or unworthiness. If you don't believe you'll be supported, you'll feel isolated. And any of those emotional states, your actions become inconsistent, weak, or non-existent. And then you tell yourself a story that confirms it. See, I always fall off. But you didn't fall off because of discipline. You fell off because of belief. The body follows the mind. The emotion follows the meaning. You can't separate them. When someone believes their voice doesn't matter, their tone gets quieter. When someone believes they're going to fail, their muscles literally contract. Their breath shortens. Their shoulders cave. That's not random. That's your nervous system responding to the emotion created by your belief. If you want to lead, if you want to influence, you want to change your life, if you've got to master that chaining belief, emotion, action. This is also why change doesn't last unless it's emotional. You can't think your way into a new life. You have to feel your way into it. A breakthrough doesn't come when you read a fact. It comes when you associate massive pain with your old belief and massive pleasure with a new one. That emotional leverage is what rewires the system. That's why someone can have a near-death experience and change their entire identity overnight. Because the emotional intensity is so high, the old belief gets shattered, and in its place a new belief is born. One that says, life is precious. Or, I won't waste another moment. Or, I'm stronger than I thought. Emotion is the accelerator of change. It's what takes an idea from the head to the heart, from theory to action. You could hear the same message 100 times and nothing changes. But hear it once in the right state, at the right moment, with the right emotional intensity, and your life pivots. That pivot doesn't from information. It comes from a belief that finally clicks. A belief that finally feels real. And with that feeling comes motion. Real motion. Sustainable motion. This is why rituals matter. Why language matters. Why focus matters. Because what you focus on becomes what you feel. If you focus on what's missing, what's wrong, what's scary, your emotion will reflect that, and your behavior will spiral. But if you focus on what's possible, what's exciting, what's within your control, your emotion shifts, your state changes, and from that state, you behave differently. You speak differently, you live differently, you lead differently. You can't fake belief. You can say the affirmations. You can wear the mask. But your nervous system knows the truth, and the emotion you carry will always betray the story you're telling. If you want to shift your actions, don't just look at behavior. Go upstream, look at the emotional fuel behind the behavior. And then go even deeper, look at the belief behind the emotion. Everything is connected. The belief creates the emotion drives the action creates the result, and the result reinforces the belief. That's the loop. That's the pattern. You're either spiraling upward or spiraling downward. The key is to break the loop where it starts. Not at the level of behavior, but at the level of belief. Because if you can change what you believe about yourself, you'll change how you feel. And if you can change how you feel, your actions will transform. And once your actions change, the world responds accordingly. One of the most powerful realizations a person can have is this: beliefs are not fixed. They are not etched into your DNA. They are not lifelong sentences. They are patterns. Mental constructs built from repetition, emotion, and interpretation. And because they're patterns, they can be broken, interrupted, rewired. You don't have to be at the mercy of what you believed yesterday. You can intervene in the script. You can disrupt the pattern. You can take back control of your internal world and install something more empowering, something that unleashes your real potential instead of chaining it. Most people never interrupt their limiting beliefs because they think those beliefs are them. They confuse the belief with their identity. I'm just not confident. I'm bad with money. I'm terrible in relationships. No, you're not. You've just believed a story long enough that it became part of your emotional muscle memory. But it's a story. It was written once. It can be rewritten. That's not just personal development talk. That's brain science. Neuroplasticity tells us that the brain can rewire itself. It creates new connections based on what you focus on, what you do repeatedly, and what emotion you bring to it, which means your beliefs. Those thought patterns that once felt so solid are changeable, moldable, programmable. But here's the thing: change doesn't happen by accident. You have to interrupt the limiting pattern. You have to catch the belief in the act. You have to shine a light on it when it shows up and say, not this time. That means becoming aware. Not just intellectually, but emotionally. You've got to notice when the old belief is trying to drive the bus. You've got to notice when it starts whispering in your ear. When it starts controlling your physiology. When it starts pushing you into the same loop you've run 100 times. That awareness is the beginning of the shift. Once you catch the belief, you've got to challenge it. Most limiting beliefs collapse when exposed to truth and emotion. Ask yourself, is this belief really true? Where did I learn this? Who gave this to me? What evidence do I have to support this belief? And what evidence exists to destroy it? If you dig even a little, you'll find the belief is often built on a shaky foundation. Childhood moment, an off-on comment, a failure you never processed. That belief never got fact-checked. It just got installed. But now you're the editor. You get to decide what stays and what gets deleted. And here's the key: you can't just remove a belief. You have to replace it. The human mind doesn't operate well with a vacuum. If you rip out an old belief and leave that space empty, the old pattern will creep back in the moment things get tough. You've got to replace that belief with something stronger, something empowering, something that feels just as emotionally charged, something that aligns with the version of you that you're becoming. It's not enough to say, I don't believe I'm a failure anymore. What do you believe instead? I am resilient. I am resourceful. I figure things out. I make progress even when it's messy. That belief creates a new emotional state. And when repeated and reinforced, it becomes the new pattern. But you don't create belief just by saying it. You create it through emotional intensity and consistent action. You have to feel it and prove it. That's the formula. You get emotionally associated with the new belief, and then you take action in alignment with it. The more references you stack, the more evidence you collect, the more powerful that belief becomes. Until one day, it's no longer a belief you're trying to adopt. It's simply who you are. Sometimes, the best way to destroy a limiting belief is to take massive action in the opposite direction. If you believe you're not a leader, step up and lead in the moment when it's most uncomfortable. If you believe you can't handle rejection, go put yourself in situations where you get told no, and realize it didn't kill you. Action shatters illusion. When your body does something your mind said you couldn't, the belief has no choice but to evolve, and that evolution is where growth lives. There's also the power of language. Your language reveals and reinforces your beliefs. Listen to how you speak about yourself, about your circumstances, about your future. Every time you say, "I'm not good at this," or "That's just the way I am," you're cementing the old pattern. But when you shift your language, even slightly, you begin to loosen that cement. Change. "I can't," to "I'm learning how." Change. "That's not me," to "That's who I'm becoming." These shifts seem small, but they signal to your nervous system that something is changing, and your nervous system responds. Even the people you surround yourself with can either reinforce your limiting beliefs or challenge them. If you spend time with people who believe in scarcity, who talk about limits, who feed the story of why things never work, your own beliefs will start to match. But if you put yourself around people who challenge you, who expect more from you, who believe in growth and possibility, your beliefs begin to rise to the level of your environment. Proximity is power because belief is contagious. You can also anchor new beliefs using physical movement. Your body is not separate from your belief system, it's part of it. When you move differently, breathe differently, stand differently, you send new signals to your brain. This is why peak performers use physical rituals to prime themselves into powerful states. They know that physiology is the fastest path to emotional change, and emotional change is the fastest path to belief transformation. You don't have to wait for a breakdown or rock bottom moment to shift a belief. You can decide right now, in this moment, that a belief no longer serves you. You can interrupt it with truth. You can replace it with power. You can reinforce it with emotion and action. You are not stuck with the beliefs that got you here. You can choose the beliefs that will take you where you want to go. Every transformation begins with a belief. Not just any belief, but an empowering one. Something that fuels you, lifts you, drives you even when the world pushes back. Empowering beliefs are the architecture of momentum. They're the emotional infrastructure of a powerful identity. They're not just positive thoughts you tell yourself in the mirror. They're deeply rooted truths that you decide to live by. And when you install them into your nervous system, they don't just affect how you think, they change how you show up in life. Empowering beliefs have a compounding effect. They don't just work in one area, they bleed into everything. When you believe you are resourceful, that belief doesn't just help you in business, it helps you in relationships, in moments of uncertainty, in your health. When you believe that your past does not define you, that belief gives you the emotional fire to take risks, to forgive, to grow, to become someone new. That's because empowering beliefs are not just intellectual, they are experiential. They change how you feel, and they create a sense of internal motion that's almost impossible to stop once it starts. Momentum is not a product of the external world. It's not created by your bank account, your job title, or your follower count. Momentum is an emotional force. It comes from a deep internal drive, from a belief system that says, "I'm built for more. I'm making progress. This matters. I can figure it out." When you believe you're making progress, even if it's imperfect, even if it's messy, you create more energy to keep going. The belief gives you fuel, and that fuel pushes you into action, which creates results, which reinforces the belief. That's the upward spiral. The opposite is also true. Disempowering beliefs stall momentum before it even begins. They say, "What's the point? It's too hard. I've tried before and failed." And those thoughts don't just slow you down, they paralyze you. Not because of the truth of the situation, but because the emotion that belief creates robs you of power. And without power, there is no movement. But when you flip the script and adopt a belief like, "Every step counts, I've got what it takes," or "This is part of my breakthrough," suddenly you've got energy. Suddenly your physiology shifts. Suddenly, There's motion where there was once hesitation. But here's what most people miss: empowering beliefs don't just create momentum, they build identity. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your beliefs about who you are. Identity is the most powerful force in the human psyche. Once you decide, this is who I am, your brain, your body, your emotions all fall in line to protect and reinforce that identity. If you believe, I'm a disciplined person, then you'll act in accordance with that belief. Not because of willpower, but because it's who you are. If you believe, I'm a powerful communicator, you'll step into rooms differently. You'll command attention not by force, but by certainty. And that certainty comes from the identity shaped by your empowering beliefs. So how do you create that identity? You start with belief, and then you stack evidence. You don't wait to feel like a leader, you do what a leader would do. You don't wait to believe in your worth, you speak, move, and act as someone who knows they matter. You create reference points. You build the case. Every time you push through fear, every time you rise above your old patterns, every time you take the hard step when it would have been easier to stay safe, you're voting for a new identity. You're wiring it in. You're turning a belief into a behavior, and that behavior into a habit, and that habit into a character trait. That's how transformation sticks. Empowering beliefs also make you more resilient. Life's gonna hit. Circumstances will change. People will disappoint you. The question is, when that storm comes, what do you fall back on? If your belief is, this always happens to me, then the storm breaks you. But if your belief is, I always find a way, then the storm activates you. The external doesn't control your direction, your belief system does. And when you believe you're built for the long game, when you believe every challenge is shaping you, when you believe nothing is wasted, then pain turns into power. Setbacks become setups. And every single event, even the hardest ones, feed into your evolution instead of your destruction. This is why the words you attach to your beliefs matter. Don't just say, I'm confident. Say, I'm unshakable. Don't just say, I'm good at adapting. Say, I thrive in chaos. The more vivid, emotional, and specific your empowering belief is, the more your nervous system accepts it as truth. Your mind responds to emotion. So the deeper the emotion, the faster the belief locks in. This is why people can change in an instant. It's not because the facts changed, but because the meaning did. The belief changed, and that belief created a new identity. You want to change your life. Change what you believe about yourself. And don't just say it, live it, embody it, speak it when you don't feel it, move like it's already true. Train your nervous system to associate joy, pride, power with that belief until it becomes second nature. Because once it's who you are, you no longer have to push yourself, you just are that person. And that identity becomes your filter. You start to make decisions based on that belief. You start to surround yourself with people who mirror that belief. You set goals that stretch that belief. And before you know it, your external world starts to look like a reflection of the beliefs you've installed on the inside. Empowering beliefs don't just change your emotional state, they change your standards. They raise the floor of what you'll tolerate. You no longer entertain relationships that drain you, environments that limit you, or habits that betray your vision. Why? Because those things don't align with your identity anymore. And when something conflicts with your identity, it creates tension, and that tension drives change. Not from pressure, but from alignment. You start saying, that's not who I am anymore. And not from ego, but from truth, from clarity, from power. Certainty isn't just a mindset, it's a force. It's the emotional foundation that allows you to walk into a room, face uncertainty, handle chaos, and still move forward with power. Certainty is what separates those who dabble from those who dominate. It's what turns ideas into outcomes, dreams into achievements. When a person operates with true conviction, when they believe not only in the goal but in their ability to create it, everything shifts. Your voice changes, your posture changes. People feel your energy before you even say a word. That's not theory. That's the primal response to someone who's fully aligned with belief, emotion, and intention. But here's the truth: most people don't live with certainty. They live with hesitation. They tiptoe through life waiting for perfect conditions. They hold back because they're waiting to feel confident before they move. But confidence doesn't come before action. It's a byproduct of action taken with conviction. You don't need certainty about the entire path. You need certainty in your ability to figure it out as you go. When you anchor into that kind of internal certainty, you don't need everything to be perfect around you. You become the calm in the storm. You become the one others lean on. You don't just survive chaos, you shape it. Certainty is not arrogance. It's not pretending to know everything or faking your way through life. It's an emotional state that says, I trust myself. I trust my instincts. I trust that even if I fall, I'll rise again. That kind of certainty doesn't come from books. It doesn't come from strategy alone. It comes from stacking emotional references, moments where you acted in spite of fear, times when you rose above your excuses, decisions you made when the odds weren't in your favor. Those moments create a sense of self that says, no matter what, I've got this. That's conviction. That's personal power. When you have conviction, people feel it. Influence isn't about volume, it's about certainty. People don't follow the loudest person in the room, they follow the one who knows where they're going. And that kind of leadership starts inside. You can't lead others if you can't lead your own emotional state. You can't inspire people to move if you're constantly second-guessing yourself. When you step into a moment fully committed, with no plan B, with no doubt clouding your mind, everything in your physiology broadcasts that truth. You don't have to prove it, you are it. So how do you develop that level of certainty? You build it. You train it like a muscle. You decide what you believe, and then you reinforce it every day with emotion, action, and focus. You don't entertain the opposing belief. You don't flirt with doubt. Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. When doubt creeps in, you redirect. You condition your focus to align with your outcomes, not your fears. You surround yourself with people who reflect the level of belief you're committed to. And most importantly, you act. You don't wait until you're ready. You decide that you're ready. Conviction comes from decisions, not conditions. You don't need the economy to be right. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You don't need guarantees. You need a moment where you draw a line in the sand and say, this is who I am now. This is what I stand for. This is what I'm doing. That moment is where the old version of you dies and the real version of you is born. Not the version shaped by fear, by other people's opinions, by old patterns, but the version shaped by vision and decision. That version of you doesn't dabble in possibility, they execute with certainty. The world rewards those who move with conviction. Because conviction creates clarity, it eliminates hesitation, it magnetizes opportunity. People want to follow leaders who are sure, not just of the direction, but of themselves. They want to feel that someone is emotionally solid. Because in a world full of noise and distraction and chaos, certainty is rare. And whatever is rare is valuable. That's why when you speak with conviction, when you live with certainty, you don't have to chase influence. It comes to you. You also have to understand this conviction isn't loud. It's not about yelling or dominating. It's not about proving your worth. Conviction is quiet power. It's the deep, unshakable belief in who you are, in what you stand for, in the mission you've chosen. It's not just confidence in yourself, it's confidence in something greater. A cause, a purpose, a standard. When your conviction is tied to something bigger than your ego, it becomes unstoppable. Because now you're not just showing up for you, you're showing up for something sacred, something that matters. That's where true certainty comes from. Not just the belief that you can win, but the belief that what you're doing must be done. That your voice must be heard. That your work must be seen. That your story must be lived out fully. When that fire is alive in you, hesitation dies. Because there's no space for fear when your mission is bigger than your excuses. And that kind of fire doesn't just change your life, it changes everyone around you. There will be moments where the world tests your conviction, where results don't show up right away, where people don't understand, where you start to question whether it's worth it. Those are the moments that define your future. Because if your belief is rooted in outcome, you'll quit when it gets hard. But if your belief is rooted in identity, in who you are, in the certainty of your mission, then the results don't shake you, they shape you. You train certainty by deciding that doubt no longer has a seat at your table. You build conviction by doing what you said you'd do, especially when it's uncomfortable. You reinforce belief by taking action again and again, until action becomes your default and fear becomes irrelevant. The repetition of courageous behavior is what makes certainty a habit, not a hope. And once certainty becomes your baseline, your entire life begins to accelerate. Because now, you're no longer seeking permission. You're no longer asking, can I do this? You're saying, watch me. Everything you are experiencing in your life right now, the results you're seeing, the habits you're living, the relationships you're attracting, the emotions you're feeling, they're all being filtered and driven by one invisible force: your beliefs. Beliefs are the blueprint of your reality. They're the internal compass that determines what you expect, what you tolerate, what you chase, and what you walk away from, they don't just influence your life, they create it. You don't live life as it is, you live life as you believe it is. And that filter can either be your greatest prison or your greatest power, depending on what beliefs you've chosen to install. Destiny doesn't begin in some far-off future moment. It starts right here, with the thoughts you consistently hold and the emotions you attach to them. Your beliefs are shaping your decisions every single day. They're influencing how you show up in a conversation. They're dictating whether you take a risk or retreat. They're either pulling you toward growth or anchoring you to fear. And the crazy part is, most people don't even realize which beliefs are running their life. They don't slow down long enough to examine them. They just react, they repeat, and they wonder why things never really change. The moment you realize that beliefs are not facts, but choices, is the moment your life begins to shift. You get to choose what you believe about yourself. You get to choose what you believe about people, about success, about failure, about what's possible for your future. And that choice isn't just mental, it's emotional. You have to feel your way into a new belief. You have to align your body and your voice and your decisions with that belief until it becomes your new baseline. Because it's not enough to intellectually understand that beliefs shape destiny, you have to live like it's true. Think about it. Two people can go through the same event. Let's say a business fails. One person believes, I'm a failure, nothing ever works for me. The other believes, this is feedback, I'm learning, I'm about to level up. Same external event, radically different emotional experience. The first person gets stuck, they shrink, they hesitate the next time. The second person grows, they reflect, they course correct and get back in the game faster and stronger. The belief created a different interpretation, and that interpretation shaped the next step. And that next step is how destiny begins to unfold. Your destiny is being shaped in real time by the beliefs you're reinforcing right now. Every time you say, I can't, it's not for me, I'm not that kind of person, you're scripting a structure where you stay small. Every time you say, I'm committed, I'll figure it out, I'm becoming stronger, you're writing a new chapter of growth, of power, of transformation. Your language isn't just describing your life, it's directing it. And your beliefs are the GPS behind every word you speak. Even the way you handle pain is driven by belief. If you believe that pain means punishment, that discomfort is a sign to stop, you'll avoid anything that challenges you. But if you believe that pain is part of growth, that it's a signal you're breaking through, then you lean into it. You use it. You let it forge you. People who do big things in life don't have less pain. They just believe something different about the pain. They give it a different meaning. And meaning is everything because meaning creates emotion. And emotion is what drives behavior. And repeated behavior becomes your destiny. Destiny isn't random, it's not fate. It's not something written in the stars. It's built decision by decision, belief by belief, step by step. And if you don't consciously choose your beliefs, you'll unconsciously absorb them from your environment, your parents, your friends, your culture, your past. And if that environment was filled with limitation, with fear, with scarcity, then guess what your default beliefs will be? You'll carry around someone else's story like it's your own. You'll act out someone else's emotional script and wonder why your life feels off. That's not your destiny. That's inherited limitation. But the moment you decide to take ownership of your beliefs, you take back the pen. You start writing your own script. You decide that your past is not your prison, it's your preparation. That your failures are not your identity, they're your education. That your voice matters. That your vision matters, that you were born to lead, to love, to grow, to build something meaningful. And those beliefs don't just shift your mindset, they pull you into a different future. Because you'll start acting in alignment with that future. You'll start attracting people, opportunities, and experiences that resonate with the version of you who already lives there. Beliefs also dictate your standards, they define what you're willing to settle for. If you believe, I don't deserve great love, you'll tolerate relationships that drain you. If you believe, I'm not meant to be wealthy, you'll sabotage financial success every time it starts to grow. But if you raise your belief, you raise your standards. You stop playing in the shallow end of life, you stop negotiating with fear. You start saying, this is what I'm made for. And then you begin to act like it. You begin to walk, speak, move with a level of clarity and intensity that demands something greater from life. That level of belief doesn't just shape your destiny, it shapes the destinies of everyone you touch. Because beliefs are contagious. When you live with deep belief, With unshakable conviction, you give people permission to do the same. You don't even have to say a word. Your energy leads. Your example leads. You become the spark that wakes something up in others, and that's legacy. Not just what you achieve, but who you become in the process, and how that transformation ripples out into the world around you. The real shift happens when you stop chasing external outcomes and start aligning with internal beliefs that match the life you want. You stop saying, "I'll believe it when I see it," and you start living like, "I'll see it when I believe it." That's the game. That's where change sticks. That's where your life bends in the direction of vision. Because belief isn't just the beginning. It's the force that carries you through, that sustains you when it gets hard, that reminds you of who you are when the noise of the world tries to make you forget. When belief becomes your foundation, your fuel, your filter, your destiny becomes inevitable. Belief is the invisible force that forges reality. It's not just a concept, it's the spark behind every action, every breakthrough, every transformation. The difference between people who live extraordinary lives and those who settle isn't talent, luck, or circumstance. It's belief. Belief in what's possible. Belief in who they are. Belief in their power to shape the world around them, rather than be shaped by it. You are not bound by your past. You are not defined by your limitations. You are only ever defined by what you decide to believe in this moment. Because when you shift your belief, you shift your emotional state. When your emotional state changes, your behavior changes. And when your behavior changes consistently, your life never stays the same. You've got the ability to rewrite your story, to raise your standards, to choose beliefs that align with the life you know deep down you're meant to live. It starts by questioning what you've accepted as truth and replacing it with a vision of who you really are, stronger, bolder, more capable than you've ever allowed yourself to be. Not someday. Now. The future doesn't happen to you. It happens through you. And belief is the key. When you own that, when you step into it fully, when you stop negotiating with fear and start conditioning certainty, your life becomes a reflection of your deepest truth, not your deepest doubts. So ask yourself, what do I believe about who I am? What do I believe about what's possible? Because your destiny is not waiting out there in the distance. It's being written with every belief you reinforce and every decision you make right now. Choose power. Choose vision. Choose belief. That's how you shape your destiny.